All right, this is Brother P with tidbits from the Word. It's time for us Christians to wake up. It's too late, more than likely, to retrieve the United States of America from imploding. America's going to implode. It's not going to explode. It's going to implode from the inside by fooling around with all of the rest of the world and those who do not love God. Let me show you a little thing I started early today doing a study. And the children of Israel were under bondage in Babylon for 8 years. They were under Moab for 18 years. Now they're in their own country. And these guys, these Babylonians have come in and put them under bondage for 8 years. And then the Moabites came and put them under for 18 years. And then the Philistines was an unknown time. It wasn't recorded the amount of time. But the Canaanites came and put the Israelites under bondage for 20 years. And the Midian, 7 years. And the Philistines and the Amorites, 18 years. And the Philistines, 40 more years. What happened? Israel let these other countries infiltrate them and turn these countries were godless. They didn't believe in the same God Israel did. And so they took over and they oppressed Israel. And they oppressed the God of Israel down to where the Israelites ended up marrying the Moabitess women, marrying the Babylonian women, marrying the women of Moab, marrying the women of Philistia, marrying the Canaanite women, marrying the Midianite women, and worst of all was the Philistines and the Ammonites. And because of the mix, God said, do not do that. Told the men of Israel, do not marry outside of your race. These are heathen people. They are sold out to gods that aren't me. They are not of me, and two can't be joined together or the house is divided. So here's this guy supposed to be worshiping God, and he's married this woman. She's beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. They have, a lot of these races have very beautiful women. And they saw these women and they married them. You remember Balak said, this is how you want to get these people? He said, I can't curse them, but I'll tell you this. You bring your women over there, and you let these guys start seeing your women, and they're going to warn. Or you let and these men came over there, they're going to want these women. And when they start doing that, God will curse them, because they're not supposed to marry outside of their race. And that's what they did. And so God had a curse on them. Now we're doing things. I went all the way from here to Ecclesiastes on our excerpt today and showed where the outsiders outside of the country of Israel came in. And we have seen the same thing. The outside of the United States of America have come back in. They didn't come in with ships and guns this time. They crept in unawares. They had billions of dollars to place somewhere, and they found a spot on American soil. I live in the state of Georgia right now. I understand, and I don't know how much truth there is in it, and I probably will not repeat it too far down the road, but I understand we've sold our swamps to another country. Well, don't you think another country's got enough industrial ability to come in and turn those swamps into high land. All they got to do is bring a dredge in and dredge the bay and pump it up on the land. I had the opportunity one time to paint a big outfit that was on the shorefront off the coast of Georgia, and they pumped that sand up there out of the ocean. They pumped it up there until it was 20 feet deep, as big as a landing strip where you could land a plane on. And so, yes, everything you can turn the swamp, make a river there, and turn the swamp into high land. We're short-sighted here in America sometimes. We don't realize the how industrial some countries are. They are like the ant. They don't let people in their country, but they'll come to your country and invade it. So back into the Bible. God's going to allow that. I've been hopping on that now for quite a while, and I got to quit doing it because reading the Bible, saw that every time Israel gave their right hand to another country to come in, that other country caused them to become under bondage. And we're going to come under bondage. If we're not already so far under bondage we can't get out, but we're going to come under bondage of other countries, and then they're going to have the right to come and claim what they want. I heard some statistics a few years ago, and I began to follow that thing a little bit, of how many foreign entities we have in our White House that are controllers of our laws, and they're making our laws fit their country's laws. And because of that, when they get 51% of the White House, which they're already right there, but they haven't stepped up and said so yet, but that's where they are. As a matter of fact, they're about 55%. And they have a majority. When the time comes, they're going to take that majority and they're going to step out and start stomping down all the minorities. And who's going to be the minorities? We are. The American people are going to be the minority because they're going to have the majority vote. And that makes us minorities. And God's going to allow that. I see this everywhere. I see punishment, punishment, punishment. Going to make them perish. Going to make them perish out of their land. And drive them out, but with these other people. Because they've allowed these other people to come in. I got a list right here of how many places that when the prophet was driven out of Israel. The prophet was put out of Israel. There were 25 things sent of God. He brought them out of Egypt. But they brought enough Egypt with them to get them in trouble. He delivered them out of the house of bondage. But they figured out how to get themselves back in bondage. He delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. But they figured out how to get back in bondage. He said, I delivered you out of the hand of all of the oppressors in Joshua. You remember the great battles in Joshua, and Joshua the great general. And he won land after land, and he won stuff. He won great battles. And he drove them out from you. God said, I drove them out from you. He used Joshua to do it. But he drove those people out. He said, I gave you their land. So he tells Israel, I gave you their land. So I said, I am your God. Fear not the gods of the Amorites in this land. Now, our problem today is we're beginning to fear the gods of other people, when the God of heaven is the God. We're taking God out of school. We're taking God out of business. We're taking God out of everything. We allow them to come in here. Did you know that I heard a couple of years ago that one of the schools down here said that it was a requirement that the children learn about the Quran? Now, isn't that funny? They can take the Quran or however you want to say it, into the school and study it and learn it so they'll know what the other people do they say, but they can't take the Bible in there. Well, the Quran says if somebody is not of our persuasion, kill them. So that people running around now killing big groups of people because they've been short-sighted in just about nearly everything that's godly today. And the angel of the Lord was one of three persons of the divine Trinity. This is clear. Where the angel is referred to as Jehovah, he came to confirm the words of the prophet of verses 8 through 10 in the spirit world. There were 12 acts of angels in the days of the writing of the Bible in this particular place. God is watching. Why did I bring that up? I brought that up because God has his angel watching. His angel watching. The United States of America has been under a blessing for a couple hundred years. And during that couple hundred years, that blessing has diminished. God said, if you join up to a harlot, I'm not there. How can the two be one if they're not agreed? And we can't agree with the devil. So if what we do with outside entities, if they're godless entities and they come in here and we allow that, then we're doing that. What am I doing today? I don't know. I'm talking to the country, I reckon. But back to the individual. Are you a soul winner? Are you one of those you can? Are you touching those who you can touch? Are you touching the people that are hurting today out in this world? They're everywhere. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Every day, every day, every day. We had a few days ago we went out soul winning, had some come in the church. Hurting people. Hurting people. We have people that are hurting because of the oppression that is on this country because of the neglect of God. I just took a trip north. And in that northern trip, the state that I was in, I didn't meet soul winners. I didn't meet soul winners. I met a lot of people doing an awful lot of good things, but I didn't meet soul winners. I met a lot of people that were tickling their ears, having a good time, and sing songs and doing that, but leaving out of there and not being soul winners. We got to get out and be soul winners. We can't just go and have a good time and not be soul winners. When we build we're building a church right now again. We built it several times and we're building it again. And as we build it again, other churches have gone out of our church and they're out there working too. And so we're building it again. So what are we going to build it with? If you build it with other church members, you're building it with unhappy people who are more than likely out of sorts with God because they left the church they were in and they're hunting somewhere where they can come and sit down and not be pushed into doing something or asked to do something. Well, they come to the wrong church. They come to our church because we got a thing we do called Judgment Journey every year that takes a force of 300 people for about 15 nights. And you got to give your weekend. You got to give 3 weekends away, the whole weekend, Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And the whole 3 days is given to the Lord with 300 people. And it's a soul winning thing. It wins thousands of souls. You say, well, Brother Peter, what about all them souls that come and they get saved and you never see them again? That's up to God. That's between God and them. That ain't between me and them. I used to work in a little town down the road from myself here. And I drive home every night. And chances are I'd pick somebody up on the road, hitchhiker, or somebody walking. And I'd say, by the way, sir, and sometimes ma'am, be a woman, if you died right now, would you go to heaven? That's a good question. I don't know if you even see that. But if you died right now, would you go to heaven? And a lot of them say, well, I would hope to. Well, that's not good enough. Do you want to know? I've got 15 miles to travel. And in that 15 miles, I'm going to pull up an exit. And I'm going to let that person out of the car. But before I let them out, I would love them to realize that Jesus Christ is still on the throne, that God is still God, He's still saving souls, and He'll save their soul. If they'll ask Him, if they'll say, Jesus, I am a sinner, forgive me of my sin, come in my heart and save my soul. And then I usually give them a piece of money and a New Testament or a Bible. I carry Bibles and New Testaments in my car all the time. I'll give them either a Bible or a New Testament. And they'll go out and head down the road. And I may never ever see them again. But it's not up to me. It's up to God. God's the one that's in their heart now. And so God can use them. You say, well, he's a derelict. Well, he may be a derelict all the rest of his life, but he can be a derelict with God in his heart and in his life. And he can win other people to the Lord. He can talk. I have picked up some that were saved. They said, I carry my Bible. I pray every day. I ask God to show me different places to camp, to set up my tent, or to put my canvas up so I can be out of the weather. And they have adopted this way of life, but they can be witnesses too, wherever they go. They can be workers in the kingdom. Nobody says you have to live in a big house to be a worker in the kingdom. Nobody says you have to go to a big church to be a worker in the kingdom. You can be a derelict out there and work in the kingdom and work in the Lord. So, here we are. Take your fathers. Over here, we're talking about Gideon. And Gideon was going to restore some worship in their area. And what he is going to do, the Bible said, take your father's second bullock of 7 years old. Second bullock of 7 years old. What is that telling you? What is that telling me? That's telling me that God knows those bullocks. He knows the one that's 7 years old, and he knows there's two there. But he wants him to take the second one that's 7 years old and offer it. And then he's going to tell him a little later to take the other one and put it out there on the altar and burn it. And so there's two different devotions right here going on. This one bullock, God said, I'll receive this bullock for the offering over here, or the sin and whatever. And then over here, we're going to burn this one, and the incense and the smoke's going to come up. And I'm going to know that this first one over here, we've accepted. And he said, I'll smell the sweet, sweet savor, and I'll heal your land. Well, Gideon did some stuff, and God healed their land, but then they went right on a little later and brought it all back into a problem. He said, throw down the altar of Baal that your father set up. You know, when I got saved, I opened my door in my house. I got saved November 5th, 1972. And by the 1st of December, I opened my door of my house. I picked up my television and I threw it out the door onto the sidewalk and broke it all to pieces. So we lived for several years without a television in the house. Now I will tell you this, you could control it without throwing it out and breaking it. But I can tell you this, if you've got one in the house, you more than likely won't control it. I have the same problem today because I do have a TV. When I need to be in this book studying, sometimes I'm watching Jeopardy, or I'm watching Wheel of Fortune, or I'm watching Dancing with the Wolves, or something that is taking time and mind away from doing godly things. Now he said, cut down the groves. Well, what were the groves? In that day, people planted groves of trees, and they put their gods in there, and every kind of thing under the sun was done under those trees. Now we do everything under the sun and under roofs of houses. But in that day, they did things under groves of trees, and every kind of perversion under the sun went on under the trees. And we can find many of those statements in the Bible. It said, throw down the altar of Baal your father built, cut down the groves, build an altar unto Jehovah upon the top of a rock. And he said here, on the top of the rock. Now, God has special places on this earth where he will come and meet with man. And at this particular time, he had this particular rock, was his rock, and they had built a thing to Baal on it. And he said, I want my rock cleaned off, and I want you to use it properly and use it right. And so he tells them to throw that down off that rock. Verse 26. And built an altar that thy Lord God upon the top of this rock in the ordained place, and take the second bullet and offer burnt sacrifice and the wood of the groves which thou shalt cut down. So he burned up what was planted for idols, what was planted to do heinous things under these trees, under these groves. And Gideon took 10 men of his servants and did as the Lord had said unto him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day, so he did it by night. You know, sometimes we have to do things at night. The Lord has me go down here to the station at night a lot of times, and every time I think of it, I want to pack up and go down there. And where would people traveling, and they stop at the gas pumps at a truck stop, and I can go out there and freely talk to them about God, and hand them a tract, give them a little confidence that God is still God and he's still on the throne. Especially businessmen traveling in their cars by themselves today. And there's no telling after they've left home what their trek is for the next week or two they're on the road. And how they need to know that God's on the scene. And he'll keep them from that wicked woman on the weekend, being away from home. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the groves were cut down that was by it, and the second bullet was offered up on the altar that was built. And they said one to another, who had done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, they found out Gideon, the son of Joash, had done this thing. And by the way, Joash was his daddy. And the men of the city said unto Joash, bring out thy son, that he may die, because he hath cut down the altar of Baal, and because he hath cut down the grove that was by it. And Joash said unto all that stood against him, will ye plead for Baal? Will ye save him? He that will plead for him, let him be put to death, whilst it is yet morning. If he be a god, let him plead for himself, because one hath cast down his altar. He's saying if Baal be a god, and Joash had allowed all this to be built on his property, And he said, but if Baal be a god, let him come and say for himself. You're not going to get my son and kill him. I'll tell you that right now. He said, therefore, on that day, he called him Jerubbaal, saying, let Baal plead against him, because he hath torn down his altar. Then all the Midianites, and the Amalekites, and the children of the east were gathered together and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet, and Abiezer was gathered after him, and he sent messages throughout all of Manasseh. By the way, Manasseh was God's land. It was one of God's tribes. It was on God's property, who also were gathered after him. And he sent messages unto Asher, unto Zerubbabel, and unto Naphtali, and they came to meet them. And Gideon said unto God, if thou wilt save Israel by mine hand, as thou hast said, behold, I will put a fleece of wool. Now this is where Gideon put a fleece of wool down. He said, Lord, I would like you tonight. There's not going to be any dew anywhere but on this fleece. He got up in the morning, he ran water out of it. And then the next thing he did, he said, God, if it's really so, you really want me to do this, if you really want me to follow you, you want me and everything, he said, I want you to do this. You put the dew all over the ground tonight, but none on the fleece. And after that happened, Gideon sold out to God. And Gideon said unto God, let not the anger be hot against me, and I will speak but this once. Let me prove, I pray thee, but once more the fleece, let it now be dry. And God did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, and there was dew on the ground. Let me tell you something. Gideon tempted God to kill him. Just say, hey, I told you what I would do, and that's proof enough. Gideon said, no, I want to see proof. Then Gideon became the great guy with a band of 300 men. Our time's about come and gone. So Gideon followed the Lord from then on. And God knew that he was going to do that. But God did allow him to go through some temptation. And then the fourth sign of victory. He had victory, and it came to pass in the same night that the Lord said unto him, arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it unto thine hand. Now he's fixing to run down a mountain and into a host of people that have all got swords and spears and everything else that they had. And God said, I've already put it in thy hand. Well, Gideon had seen what God did with the fleece. God made it wet when he wanted to, and made it dry when he wanted to, and he had done it. So Gideon knows God can do what he wants. But if thou fear to go down with Pharaoh, thy servant, down to the host, and thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then went he down, him and Pharaoh, his servant, unto the outside of the armed men, and were set in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay alone in the valley, like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without number, and they were as the sand of the sea in the multitude. And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto him, his fellow, and said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came into a tent, and smote it, that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay alone. And his fellow answered and said, this is nothing else save the word of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel. For under his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the host. And it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped and returned unto the host of Israel and said, Arise, for the Lord hath delivered it into the hands of the Midian, unto our hands, the host of the Midians. And he divided 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers, and a lamp within the pitcher. And he said unto them, Look on me, and do likewise. And behold, when I come outside of the camp, it shall be that I shall do, when I blow the trumpet, and all that are with me blow the trumpets, also on the side of the camp, and the sword of the Lord of Gideon. So Gideon and the 300 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camp, being of a middle watch, and they had put newly set watches, and they blew the trumpet and brake the pitchers where hands were. And 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers, and held their lamps up, and lifted their hands and the trumpets in their right hands. This is at night now, almost morning, to blow with hoe, and they cried, the sword of the Lord. They carried the sword of the Lord and of Gideon, and they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew their trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all of the host. And the host fled to Bichemeth in the Zareth and the border of Abimelech unto Tabbath. And the men of Israel gathered them slaves together out of Naphtali and out of Asher and out of Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. Now let me tell you what, we don't have time to get all the way in it, but how this took place was when the Midianites said, They're upon us, they're upon us. There's only 300 men out there. There's 1 million down here. And they said, They're upon us, they're upon us. And they ran out of their tents, they hauled their swords out, and they started killing each other because they couldn't see. And they didn't know who they were fighting. They thought they were fighting Israelites. So every man fought with each other in their own camp. This is what great drunkenness and great reveling do in a camp like that. That was a practice to all get drunk and lay around and do things and think they were safe because of their numbers. There were so many of them. They weren't worried about the Israelite. But it only took 300 Israelites with the hand of God to break that band. Well, our time's come and gone. This is Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. We got a picture here that if God be on your side, who can be against you? You can know who it is, but you can come against who it is with God. God will make it work for you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.